Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. And a good morning to you here on Parental Advisory. Very exciting day. I love when we have in-studio guests.
Hey, wait a second. Did it just get a lot handsome in here?
I think it is more handsome than usual.
Yes! It's extra handsome today. Hey, we got Tom Groth here.
Hey, Anthony.
Nice to see you, buddy. And Tom's an IRSMedic alumni.
Woohoo.
And he's now leading up his firm in Brookfield, right?
Yeah, it's in Brookfield.
What's the name of your firm?
Glusgall Ramos Growth LLP.
You couldn't get your name first.
Well, you know, that was a thing.
Yeah, yeah. That was ending last is not a bad place.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we were all talking about how we didn't care whose name was first. And we were talking about it for so long. It was sort of delaying things, and I realized, well, it's okay. It doesn't really matter where my name is. It actually sounds better with the unique name at the first, and plus, you know, growth at the tail.
And growth,
right?
And parent Wynn.
And
there
Wynn.
You go, the Wynn. Yeah, there you go. I like it. Now, Claudine did do the fatal mispronouncing of your last name on Friday.
Did.
Yeah.
And I really laid into her. I made her feel just this.
I have
small.
notes right here. Add the W.
Add the W.
Add the W.
Yeah.
So do you have any mnemonics for people to remember? It's growth, not groth.
Well, you know, the problem is some people think I'm saying gross a lot of the time, too.
Yeah, okay.
So that makes it tough, you know, if I emphasize the O a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Mr. Gross.
Mr.
No.
Gross?
Yeah. So I've considered changing my name to Groth, actually, because people have less trouble spelling it.
God, that's a shame. Now, so you know, Tom, we brought Tom on because there was one thing that I think one topic that you just really, really liked when you were here, and you just kicked butt at these cases, and I know you're still doing it, is innocent spouse with the IRS. But just before that, I asked you this question. Hopefully, you have an answer for me before the show went on. Tom and I do some work with the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services. Sometimes criminal charges are involved, and we've seen each other in court up there. So 2 words to describe the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services.
It's a tough call, but I think I'm going to go with too fast.
Too fast?
Too fast.
Too fast.
Too fast.
Okay, explain.
Well, you see, some might say they're too slow. Maybe Department of Revenue Services is too slow because they don't actually assess a business's liability against an owner, if it's an entity, but they're too fast to prosecute them. So
right,
instead of actually going through the motions, giving them the due process rights they have with an individual assessment, instead what they do is they're just too fast to send their cops out and arrest them.
That's what it's kind of funny. Yeah, we were working that case together, where it's like, where's your assessments? Right here in the complaint. Like, what? You never gave the taxpayer notice of this or anything of any time to chance to come up with like, no, you guys are totally off your rocker. And it was really the prosecutor. It took us forever. Finally, the prosecutor just says, "Oh God, I don't want to prosecute this. This is terrible."
I actually saw my first. I saw my first individual assessment, my first civil individual assessment.
Really?
And it was in the context of a bankruptcy case. So the individual was filing for bankruptcy, and then Department of Revenue Service said, okay, we'll actually get around to assessing the individual assessment so that we can slow down the bankruptcy and actually try and get this person individually on the hook and maybe get something out of the bankruptcy estate. That was the first time I've ever seen it. Usually they just if they're just having trouble collecting, they just threaten you with criminal prosecution, and then eventually
they send out a special agent to you, and the special agents are typically guys who are ex-detectives. And they're looking for ways to, maybe have a little bit more relaxed career instead of, investing gangs.
Oh, okay. They have to come to blue collar.
Yeah, you're like, I want to get in this tax thing. And they may know something about tax. I'm not going to say they don't know anything, but I'm just going to say they don't know a lot. And so they're just going to go with whatever one person at the Department of Revenue Services will say. This is true for a lot of state agencies that, one of the overlooked things is that the IRS has a much bigger administrative sort of procedures, and far more administrative protections, rights to appeal, that when you get into your state courts, you just don't have them. And there's not the room to negotiate. Now, usually your state liabilities are not what your IRS liability is. So it's like, okay, well, we can't get the greatest deal in the world, but luckily you don't owe that much. The problem is when you get to sales and use taxes with states, you really got to be on top of it quick because you miss something. And then a lot of times, the IRS will always send us a notice of what they're going to send to the client. Well, the Department of Revenue Services will send it to the client. And you have to specifically tell them to send it to you, or they won't send it to you. And then the client gets it, and then they still won't send it to you. Like, oh, yeah, you missed your time. Too late.
Well, they have a checkbox on their power of attorney now that says, check this if you want to be sent communications. Right. Well, I would like to be sent communications. I have to check. I don't think it says, but that's what it should say anyway. I don't think it says check this to be sent notifications and communications to your client.
So too fast. Okay. Yeah. I was going to say my 2 words would be a hen house.
Yeah, well, that's a good one too.
It's like a hen house. There's just rules are made somewhat arbitrarily. There's a few people in there who know what they're doing, but I think they're overruled by just there's various entities moving around, and it's more personality based. Yeah, it's based around personalities, and I don't think there's strong leadership there. No. I'm trashing our community. I mean, there's just not strong leadership.
Well, did you see they got a law passed recently? DRS got our legislature to pass a law, basically saying that if you haven't paid your sales taxes, then they shouldn't or they can't renew your cigarette license and your sales and use tax license. Right. Now, it says they can't unless you're in a payment arrangement that's satisfactory to them. So they still have the say because they just say, oh, we're working something out, so this is satisfactory to us. Or you submitted an offer and we're working on it, so we're satisfied right now with the way things are going. So it's really still discretionary, but they send out this letter that says, as you may know, Public Act, blah, 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 says that we have to not renew your license now. And then they send somebody to your place of business and they arrest you for operating without a permit. Now, sales and use tax permits are renewed every 5 years. Cigarette license permits are renewed every 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I think it sounds like we'd have another show on DRS. Jeez, I got a little sidetracked. Sorry. Because this is about innocent spouse. Claudia, what do you think of when I say the 2 words together, innocent spouse?
Well, I had a lot of thoughts, so I had to look it up. So I'll tell you the IRS definition. If your spouse fails to declare income and or fails to pay tax bills for years when you were married and filing jointly, the IRS can potentially go after you to collect the entire unpaid balance, plus any interest and penalties, even though you have since divorced. Sound pretty spot on?
No, that divorce part's a little weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird actually that they start off by saying we can go after you and collect when we're talking about innocent spouse. Yeah, but it's true.
It's generally true, but kind of misleading. I would say.
And I found a couple articles that I thought was funny. It basically said whichever spouse seems easier to get the money from, that's who they're going to go after.
Yeah. Yep. And that's also with business taxes, right. Trust fund recovery and sales and use, no matter where you are, they look to say, where are we going to get this? And a lot of times the more culpable person, the bigger dirtbag they are and know how to hide stuff and disappear. We couldn't find them. So we think you're responsible. And you have the money, so could you pay us?
It's law.
And think about in terms of innocent spouse. Think about the fact that a lot of times the husband owns a business, or you'd say husband, but the
that's really
spouse,
racist.
Sexist. The one who's hiding the income usually is a business owner, so they're paying or not paying estimated taxes. There's no constant check to collect. Yeah. Now the innocent spouse in this case usually maybe has a job for some pocket money, maybe to pay for the kids' activities, some money for herself. Maybe that's really what the household groceries are paid out of. So that's really easy money to attach because they just send a levy notice to the employer. And it's really easy money.
Oh yeah, right. That's what happens. Right, and that's where so many of these cases come is the spouse that we've seen this. And I think we'll go out a little bit of order because this is typically how the cases come to us. Yeah. Maybe for you too. But the spouse, the person who's not innocent, calls us because their wages are levied and they're working as a secretary. Usually something like that, secretary or maybe a teacher.
I don't think they say secretary anymore.
Administrative assistant.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I just don't want to be racist. I mean sexist. And then they come in and they're like, okay, yeah, so what happened? And then usually they tend to be, quieter because been taken for a ride. Mm-hmm. And then you say, okay, well, this was, so your husband, you okay, so what was going on? Okay, so your husband had business. I'm like, okay. And so you're just like, your mind is going, innocent spouse, like, okay, well, we might be able to figure out a way, to get this off. But first we got to get that levy released by showing it, that this is creating a hardship. get that. Then we go to look through like, okay, can we get an innocent spouse? Now, one of the things is that we were talking about earlier was that there's not just innocent spouse. There's something called equitable relief. Now, what's equitable relief, Tom?
Well, equitable relief is actually, it really is what innocent spouse is now. Because, you have two sections of innocent spouse. You have 6015B, 6015C. Now, 6015B is basically, it's more restrictive than 6015F. So basically, equitable relief.
There's nothing like citing code sections for our listeners. I mean, they're just like, yeah, oh my God. There's really.
All right. Well, okay. So basically, the difference is that equitable relief, the major difference, and the major difference that's been a big change in the last couple of years is time. Yes. You have 2 years to file for relief under the other two code sections. You have 10 years, or actually, it's the CSED date. Because they actually changed that based on comments.
CSED, you know the CSED. What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know what that? Yeah, you do.
I don't know.
Collection statute of limitations.
Oh, the collection statute of limitations.
Now, equitable relief also used to only be applicable to underpayments, but now it's applicable to understatements too. So really, it sort of swallows up. It swallows up B and C. The only real reason that you're going to use one of the other
B and C, you lost me at A.
Okay. well, listen. Basically, you have traditional innocent spouse where you didn't have a reason to know about the understatement, and it would be unfair to hold you liable. And there's some other things as well. But basically, what 6015F does, what equitable relief does, is it sort of opens it up to more of a facts and circumstances test. It's not going to be one thing. Under traditional innocent spouse, you need to establish that you didn't have reason to know. You need to establish.
So it's supposed to be open. So equitable relief is supposed to be open.
It opens the door.
It opens the door and it gives you a way in. Now, you and I were talking about that. It was very written. It was clearly written. We want this to be read expansively.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that we should read expansively. Like we have our 9th and 10th Amendment that say this is not the list of our Bill of Rights. Say this is not the list of our rights. This is not the exclusive list. And there's the powers reserved to the states. 9th and 10th Amendment clearly state that. But all the time, you hear people say, oh, well, that's not in the First Amendment. Oh, that's not in the Second Amendment. Oh, that's not in the Third Amendment. Third Amendment, not usually. Doesn't come up too much. But Fourth Amendment. And it's like, no, that's not what it says. This is not the exclusive list of rights. There are many more rights than this. We couldn't possibly begin to list them all. Mm-hmm. And there's also powers the federal government doesn't have that belong to the states. But those are always, whenever you make those clear distinctions to say this is not the end all, people always go, this is the end all. And with innocent spouse, for years, they were saying, okay, they're with equitable relief.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a time limitation. It says it. Oh, there really shouldn't be a time limitation. Like, yeah, you're too late. The IRS would come back and say you're too late again and again. Yeah. And then Tom was telling me the history. I knew a little bit about it. There was a tax court professor who was working at a tax clinic in, I think, Wisconsin. She won the case of a equitable relief after the time, but according to the statute, she won that. But then you gave me an update. What happened to that case?
Well, basically what happened was the IRS had a regulation under the equitable relief provision that added in the 2-year statute of limitations that was already in the other two sections. Mm-hmm. So this case was brought after the 2-year statute of limitations period, and basically, one in tax court case. This case or another case like it, I can't remember exactly, the IRS actually ended up winning. So the IRS ended up winning and saying, at least one court said, the statute, your regulation is good. There can be a 2-year statute of limitations. But then the IRS ended up conceding the issue in 2012. And they came out and they said, well, we're going to come out with some other things, which they came out with, basically sort of expanding equitable relief, making it easier, newer, kinder, gentler IRS.
So I think the takeaway, and I think we'll head into our break after this, but our takeaway from innocent spouse, say, look, this is a really helpful thing. If you owe money to the IRS because of a spouse's bill, we'll talk about divorce in a little bit, that you can get it wiped out, get it off your record, and that even if you miss that typical statute of limitations on filing, you could still look for equitable relief. Because that's what the nice thing now is, because before in 2009 and 10, I was telling people, I'm like, the law, I don't know, it doesn't really look that good. It doesn't really look that good to file it. Right now the law's at. And so that was what was so exciting when that decision came out that said, no, let's look at the law the way it's written and expansive. And so I think that's the number one thing for people to know is that it does exist, and you don't have to be on the hook for something your spouse did. So I think in our next section, we're going to talk about how to make an innocent spouse or equitable relief claim, and how not to do it.
How not to do it
How
is
not to
usually
do
the
that.
most important part. All right, we'll be back right after this, right here on Parental Advisory.
Are you wondering whether you're on the right track with your streamlined submission?
Are you wondering if you qualify?
Are you wondering whether or not you might make a mistake with the IRS that you can't walk back?
Or do you just want a professional opinion because that's how you roll?
If so, take a look at our streamlined submission review process
At IRSMedic.com, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. Anthony, tell me about your recurring nightmare.
It's that nightmare where you're yelling, but no words are coming out of your mouth.
I have a similar nightmare where I'm in an emergency, I need to dial 911 and my phone won't work.
That sounds terrifying.
It is. And I think I know why we have these dreams.
Why is that?
The problem with the IRS isn't just the IRS. The problem is that people don't see the IRS for the horrible risk it presents.
I think you're right. We spend so much of our time trying to warn people about the IRS, but sometimes I wonder if our words go unheeded.
But the IRS can be dealt with the right team and the right preparation.
Can IRSMedic be the right team for someone with an IRS problem?
Yes, but only if they see the IRS as a problem.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.
And we're back here on Parental Advisory. We are joined in studio by attorney Tom Groth, an IRSMedic alumni. Thank you. And we're talking about innocent spouse relief. And what we want to do is now talk about how to do it correctly and how not to file for innocent spouse.
Yeah, and I think we want to start with how not to first, because that's you're right. That is exciting. And one of the things I've learned in my years of practice is that the law doesn't matter. The law doesn't matter.
No. It doesn't matter.
If you want to win, the law doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What wins is facts, and the law will be backfilled to reach the conclusion people who read the facts want it to be. People are not objective. These aren't people. There's nobody out there who's an objective machine.
I have no bias.
I have no bias. I am the one who is unbiased. I know. Everybody has a bias, and the people who claim to have no bias are the most biased, because that's the way bias works. So that is what I learned, and I have won some tough appeals myself in tough cases. And Tom, you've had won some incredible cases here, just some masterful jobs you've done here. And so, I think when I read your innocent spouse claims, I'm like, yeah, man, this is great. And I mean, it's developing the story, and that's what's so much fun about reading what you submit. Is that I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that about the client. It's like, this is somebody who I met with as a client, and you say, okay, let's do it. Then I'm reading, it's like, oh my God, that's really good information. Who thought of putting that in there? And, it doesn't have anything to do with the law. The law, we're just like, yeah, the law is, you get it if you're an innocent spouse. That's basically the law. And wow, she's, you're mentioning all the great things, and, painting a picture with facts. And that's what you can't insert your emotion into it. And, effective persuading writing is not looking like effective persuasive writing, just being fact. I'm just telling you the facts the way they are. And it is all factual. And what
Well, and so here's the thing, right? In this case, actually, maybe the law to a certain extent does matter. And that's because innocent spouse, equitable relief, it's a facts and circumstances test.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, so this is literally what the equitable relief section says. I'm actually going to read the code section.
Sure.
I know you love that, but it says, under procedures prescribed by the secretary, and I'll talk about that in a second, taking into account all the facts and circumstances, it is inequitable to hold the individual liable for an unpaid tax or any deficiency, and relief is not available to such individual under those other two sections I kept citing before.
Okay.
So all it says is, look, if it's unfair under all the facts and circumstances, under procedures prescribed by the secretary, then you shouldn't hold that person liable, right? Now that's not really a law, because it doesn't actually lay out requirements.
Right.
So what the IRS has tried to do is they've tried to put out a list of requirements about, these are the factors that we consider. And then they say, well, this isn't an exclusive list. So the question is, do you go through, do you check those check boxes off? Do you say, well, on this factor, maybe the IRS wins, but we're going to try to make it look rosy. On this factor, we win because this. On this factor, we're not so sure, but here are the facts, IRS. Please decide for us. So, and that's basically what the IRS wants you to do. They tell you, look, fill out this form, this 8857 form, fill it out, and answer all these questions for us, and we'll decide whether or not you're an innocent spouse.
Can I ask who's the we? Is there like a innocent spouse department? Is there a certain case manager? Is there?
Yeah, so it's out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
There's an innocent spouse department, and basically what happens is when you send in the request,
Yep.
We love Cincinnati. I know we love Cincinnati.
It's great.
Is it Ohio? I don't know. Wherever it is. Wherever it is.
I have nothing bad to say about Cincinnati.
Oh, what was it
that
again?
I
Lois?
recall.
What? So basically the first go around, you get an answer that basically says either we approved your relief or we didn't approve your relief. And if they say they didn't, they say we didn't approve your relief because you don't meet the requirements. And that's actually really, really, really helpful. When you go to the second level, because then you know exactly why the IRS didn't approve it, because you didn't meet the requirements.
That would be sarcasm there. That's always.
So, so the way not to do it, right, is to go through all the factors, right? So the IRS has several factors.
So basically, if you because this is basically what you're saying is that the law says it's really a facts and circumstances, but the IRS says fill out this limited thing that will only give it that won't allow you to really explain the fact and circumstances.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, they did do a great thing on the new form. They added 4 pages
Wait, is
at
this
the end.
great or
Oh,
sarcastic great?
Well, no, it's great-ish.
Okay.
They added 4 pages at the end for you to handwrite other things you would like them to know.
Oh my God.
The page used to be 4 pages. Now it's 8, and the last 4 pages say, put down anything else you want to tell us while we consider your request.
Well, this gets, I think, to something that we see all the time. Now, by the way, before I want to mention something, but when we say, you didn't go to law school that I know of.
No.
That I know of. Okay. So when we say a word like equitable, what do you think of that word?
I don't.
Okay.
Because
right. It was like, well, that's like one of those words. That's a word you do learn in law school, and you throw it around all the time. Basically, it means equitable means fair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could say fair relief, but that wouldn't be as jazzy.
Right.
You gotta, come on, fair relief. Yeah.
How can we confuse them without
exactly.
trying to make it look like we're confusing
without
them?
intentionally trying to make it look like we're
Yeah.
confusing. Yeah, it's full of that. The law is completely full of that to take our language out of the realm of people who are smart. Just like, hey, let's throw a word in you're not going to understand. And then in law school, we're conditioned to throw these words around like everyone understands them. And we're not trying to.
And we don't want to ask us people over here because we don't want to look stupid.
I'm like, I know, like, she doesn't know. She's like, equitable. She's like,
It makes money?
yeah.
So how's that possible?
So equitable relief. And now we talk about that. Now you've got me off. Hold on. You got me off base here. About how people and a lot of tax professionals, a lot of individuals, when they're dealing with the IRS, whether it's an innocent spouse or payment negotiations, offering compromise, whatever it is, they treat that form as a tax return.
Yeah, they
form.
fill it out. They fill it out like a tax return, right? So for example, one of the factors that's going to weigh in favor of relief is if it's going to create an economic hardship. And you've talked about this before, right? Currently not collectible.
And currently non-collectible is the status where the IRS says, yeah, you're too dead broke to pay us anything. Just don't run up a new debt. If you get a tax refund, we're gonna grab it, but we won't bother you until maybe your adjusted gross income goes up. They never tell you what will trigger it, but you can write out that collection statute of limitations, the CSAT, by being in CNC.
Right. And the question really to me is why, if you're currently not collectible, why are you filing for innocent spouse?
Well, I think
unless you have other good factors.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to win it for you. It's going to weigh in favor of relief. But really, what it's going to do is it's going to say it's actually going to go to another factor, which is I think where the IRS is sort of trying to hide in something there. They're trying to say, well, give us your numbers. But one of the things that weighs against relief is whether or not you got a significant benefit from the understatement or the underpayment. So if you tell them, here are my assets, here's my income, including my alimony, by the way. It's supposed to be, if something's part of a divorce agreement, it's not considered a significant benefit. But then the IRS sort of backtracks, and there are things like dissipated assets with innocent spouse too. So they're going to look at, well, you tried to move money away from one spouse to the other spouse as part of the divorce, and then now you're trying to file this innocent spouse to get away with nobody paying the tax liability. So if you
which, by the way, can be done. I mean, if you were trying to dirtbag the IRS, you completely could do that. And what you just to go through what Tom did. Dissipated asset, nice use. A dissipated asset is basically saying, I have $1 million, but I know people are going to be coming looking for money from me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to gift this $1 million to my friend Chris Chen, mm-hmm. who's working hard over there so he can go to school, become a creative director. Mm-hmm. So I'd give him $1 million. The IRS comes to me, hey, we want to collect money to you. Like, no, I'm dead broke. Don't have anything. That's a really easy example of a dissipated asset. He gave it away to avoid collection. That's really it. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine that if there's husband and wife, they're kind of going through a divorce and say, hey, look, honey, there's going to be a lot more money here for you if you play ball with me. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to run up this liability. It's going to be on you. We're going to take stuff out of my name so they can't collect it, put it into you. You won't be able, you're going to be innocent. So you'll have everything. And then just, on the side, hey, when I need a few bucks, you're not going to give me a hard time about it. Deal? Oh, sure. So there is definitely that sort of collusion that could work out. So that's something that the IRS should be looking out for. Yeah. And they're trying to, but in a lot of cases, I think jump the gun.
Right.
And that's really that's what you have to understand when you're filing this. What is the IRS looking for? Why are they asking these questions? And if you don't understand that why, you're going to answer that question wrong.
Right. So they ask you, for example, another question they ask you, where was this income coming from that your husband underreported or that
and
he
we
didn't
did
pay
say
the liability?
husband.
Sorry, we said husband.
Let's switch it up.
Sorry,
and say
the non-requested spouse. Where is this income coming from that your spouse didn't report or didn't pay income taxes on? And so, if you now right? Maybe you hired somebody to figure it out. You looked at the CP 2000.
CP 2000. You know that, right?
You looked at the tax audit bill, whatever. So maybe you know where it came from now. But what the IRS is really looking for you to do is to put down on paper, this income came from here. So now when they turn around and sort of play dumb and they say, well, you must have known, right? You said you knew. Right. Did you know where the income was coming from at the time you filed the return?
Because you put it here.
And maybe you're not represented, and maybe you're not, thinking about at least how to couch things, how to phrase things, how to frame them. And maybe, you get a little mixed up and muddled because IRS is coming at you with all these things and saying, well, right? And knowing now is not the same as knowing then. And that's what matters. But
Tom, I love your phrasing of this, that these forms are traps in waiting when you don't understand it. Yeah. And I think and then you had a great phrase earlier when we were doing a little show prep about what people do on these forms.
Well, they overshare. I mean, it's one thing to tell the IRS your story. A lot of these factors are neutral. So the IRS looks at the factors, the tax court looks at the factors, even though sometimes the tax court completely ignores the revenue procedure. But the thing is that some of these factors are neutral. So economic hardship. If you don't have economic hardship, why are you sharing that information with the IRS? They put it there on the form. It's a whole page.
Trap, right.
They say, share this with us, please, because
if you're doing great, well, you have all this money because obviously your spouse didn't pay taxes, so that's why you're doing so well.
It's like you're swimming with sharks and you're throwing chum in before you jump in.
There you go, right? With no shark cage. Yes. You have no shark
You don't need to throw the chum in.
Now here's something, and we're going to get to our third spot. Now basically to tell people how to win an innocent spouse, I guess you have to kind of think like a dirtbag attorney, I would say. You have to think of a paranoid attorney and know why they're asking, how this all works together and how the law all works together, and that the traps that they're throwing out there for you to just sucker yourself and give away, and then they give their you didn't qualify.
Yep.
Got you. And the thing is that you have no basis for a tax court challenge. And that's something that we do all the time. It's like, well, if we lose here, we have tax court. But in order to have a good tax court claim, you have to build your case, from the first thing you send is building the case. And always is showing what a great client you have. Everything good. And if there's bad stuff, you just try to minimize that the best you can. Mm-hmm. So there is what this is all about. It's thinking like a paranoid attorney. So I guess if you're a paranoid attorney, you can do it yourself. Or if your CPA is, or just get a paranoid attorney might be better. Yeah. Somebody who likes doing this stuff, I think.
Yeah, before the break, I just wanted to say one of the things, and maybe we can talk to this a little bit afterwards. Yeah. One of the things with tax court and innocent spouse is that a lot of times they look at the administrative record in administrative law. So they look at what the administrative agency, what facts they had in front of them.
That would be the IRS.
And that's all they will consider. Yeah. But an innocent spouse, spouse, that's not the case. So there's no reason to overshare if you're worried. Oh, if I don't get these facts out now, then I'm not going to be able to argue them in tax court, because you will. You can bring those facts up later, even if they're not part of the record. So the question is, Are you presenting your client in the best light? Are you saying something that's going to look like it contradicts something, an argument that you want to make later on down the line, whether or not you're in appeals or whether or not you've already filed the petition?
And you see how this crazy calculus you do. That's a great point, because what Tom is talking about, because he was going to say the phrase. He's like, all right, they're telling me not to use the legal phrases. De novo review is what he was going to say. He goes, oh wait, no, I better not say that. Which means we can look at everything. It's all new, brand new review. They're not stuck with that, but a lot of times they are stuck with it with whatever you raise. But again, whatever you raise, it needs to be consistent. You can't go and contradict it, because then they'll say, well, wait a second, you said something completely different. If you left it out, if it's ambiguous, fine. So that's really something you have to put into, like, how close are we? Do we want to do this? How do we want to play it? Every factor is going in here. Everything that you're doing is so freaking carefully calculated. It is so. This is where most people don't have the energy, because you have to be a little crazy to do this.
And they're just waiting for you to screw up.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
That's kind of what it is, and people do it all the time. And then see, the IRS gets this, but the IRS gets the great press, because like, well, we offer equitable relief, right? Hey, and everybody knows equitable means fairness, yes. Right? And so they get the bonus of having great press, but when there are procedures out there, and people are like, well, this is written in English and Spanish, and you read English or Spanish, well, okay, I can do this, and I have somebody who knows taxes. They can do this too, because this is taxes. This isn't taxes. This isn't. This is a legal claim you're bringing. This is a completely different thing of a legal strategy that you completely have to do if you want to have a chance of winning. It just doesn't happen by accident. They just don't say, oh,
that poor,
not 1 out of 10.
That poor guy.
They don't do that. They don't do that. Poor guy.
That poor husband.
And I think our last, we know how to do it, and we're going to talk about some miscellaneous oddities in our next spot. Now, before that, have you had a same-sex innocent spouse yet?
Not yet. I'm still looking for one.
Yeah,
it should be interesting.
I know
because the dynamic is going to be, we keep saying husband and wife.
Can you right? And that's going to be completely different. And I think it's that'll be exciting to get some of those, because they can be hard. And I don't think they're going to be reviewed. Sort of the same thing. I think there's going to be harder to get.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll be back right after this on Parental Advisory.
Are you wondering whether your current OVDP representative or yourself is on the right track with your submission?
Do you wonder if you should opt out of the standard penalty?
Have you received a closing letter from a revenue agent that you don't quite understand?
Or do you just want a second opinion because that's how you roll?
If so, review our second opinion service
at IRSMedic.com. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.
Claudine, how would you explain the IRS to an enemy?
I would say the IRS is about truth and justice and fairness.
Now, how would you explain the IRS to a friend?
In that case, I would say the IRS is like calm waters with sharks swimming right below the surface.
Can you see the sharks?
You might.
Can you feel the sharks?
They do tend to bite.
Now, let's say you wanted to go into the water. Could you safely go into the water with the sharks in the water as well?
You could safely do it with a shark cage, say.
Now, could IRSMedic be your IRS Shark Cage?
It's what we do best.
IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP. Real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. It's like the voice of an angel.
It is. Oh, there you are. There you are.
We're back live on Parental Advisory, joined in studio today by attorney Tom Groth, and we're talking about innocent spouse. We've learned how not to file for innocent spouse, how to correctly file for innocent spouse. What would you like to talk about next?
Do you think we're a little bit too much, Tom and I together? Do you just think like it's just a lot of attorney? Is it just too much?
No, it's a nice balance.
It's a nice balance?
Yep.
Okay. I just, because we would certainly, when we had lunch here, we would sort of chase people out of the room with our crazy sort of banter back and forth. And, it can be a little much, and I know that. So let's just talk about some weird things. And something I thought of was that, one of the things when we're doing, one of the people, we tell people with undisclosed offshore accounts or some criminal exposure, hey, look, this is what the IRS loves to do, is they love to file an indictment against a husband and spouse when they file jointly. And they pretty much know the spouse had nothing to do with anything. It didn't know anything, but they use that as leverage to get the guilty spouse to take a really crappy deal. Now, innocent spouse work with that?
I mean, that's an interesting question, right? Because usually with innocent spouse, the spouses are separated or they're about to be. But we've worked cases together where spouses have still been together and been successful on innocent spouse claims. I've had other claims as well. Sometimes it's hard to walk the line because, there's not really a conflict. Sometimes it's going to be better if one of them owes the IRS money and the other one doesn't, for what maybe are obvious reasons, but basically one of them has, the innocent spouse has some money, some assets that the not innocent spouse doesn't have. But in terms of pressuring one spouse, I mean, they don't have to, I guess is the difference, right? With an indictment, they're doing it because they're taking something new and they're throwing it on you. When you sign a joint return or if a joint return is filed, you're on the hook. So they can collect money from you. I don't know if the IRS is really going, and you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they're going and collecting harder against the innocent spouse. I think they're just collecting against them because usually it's easier.
Well, what I thought is interesting is that you could have a situation where if there's a joint liability that somebody owes or an additional assessment, and the innocent spouse who didn't know about it can get innocent spouse relief and be granted relief from a civil liability. But when it comes to criminal charges, there is no innocent spouse relief because it's a criminal charge.
Oh.
So it's kind of crazy because you're not making the same claims. Will go to trial. Mm-hmm. If you're that innocent, go to trial.
Right.
And I would much rather if I had an innocent spouse, a truly innocent spouse. And you said, well, which one do you think you'll get? A not guilty? What would you rather do? Try to get a not guilty verdict or get innocent spouse relief? I said, give me innocent spouse relief. I'll get that a million times before that not guilty because the games that they play in court and then everything about it. I mean, everything about how stacked it is against you. Mm-hmm. Even when they they know. And so there it is. Your spouse has to take some crappy deal because he can't live with you having the pressure. It's just a real dirtbag move that they routinely do just to get that conviction.
Yep.
And so that and then also so they don't go to trial because they don't want to go to trial. So it's something that they do a lot. I mean, only in rare cases or a few cases they do, then they drop it. And that's one of the first things you do. But that's another expense. If you're a defendant, another expense to get the case against your spouse dropped. So that's kind of a real crappy thing that they do. Now, can the IRS collect from you while your innocent spouse case is pending?
They cannot collect from the spouse that's requesting relief. So if you request innocent spouse relief, then the IRS cannot levy your wages. They cannot levy your bank accounts. They generally won't file liens if they haven't been filed already, but I haven't seen anything that says that they can't. And in addition, if you have tax refunds that are coming because, maybe you're filing married, filing separate, maybe you're filing single now because you're divorced, they're generally not going to levy your tax refunds either. Even if they do, anything that they collect from you while it's pending or 2 years before, you can get refunded to you if you're successful. So
remember our 2-year, 3-year rule?
Yep.
That's a 2-year.
Now, what's the general time frame it takes for this to go from start to finish, from the time you file the paperwork until you get your decision?
Maybe the IRS is too slow sometimes. So it really depends. It can take. I've seen them go as quickly as 3 months to get your first answer, but usually that first answer is no. A lot of times I get those letters. We need another 45 days, and I think, wouldn't it be great if I could just send the IRS those letters? I'm going to make a form letter that says, well, we got your answer to our information.
But we
need another 45 days.
We received your documents, and you don't reference the document received. I need another 45 days to give you an answer. By the way, that answer might be a letter just like this one.
Yeah. So my last innocent spouse case from start to completion took about a year.
Wow.
And that one was...
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually faster than they used to be.
It just seems like for the innocent spouse, what a crappy year. Like you're waiting a year to find out.
And that's if you
answer.
that's if you win on that second level.
Right.
Well, I've done some research into this, and guess what? The IRS sucks.
Yeah. Like what an emotional roller coaster you have to sit on.
Yeah.
God, the IRS is like a crazy ex-girlfriend.
Who has a machine gun. And she's kind of on meth right now, or coming off of it and needs
coming down.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so a year isn't bad, I think.
No.
It's, from the ex-girlfriend with
Yeah.
So let's talk about some other things. Now, people are issued, this is where we get into, the people are issued a series of letters letting them know where they are in the collection game. It starts off with a CP 501. We love things like that. Notice of intent to levy. That's one thing they send, which looks scarier than the letter that should be scary, the final notice of intent to levy.
Which isn't called that anymore.
Right. It's not called. It's not called that anymore. It's the LT. They go by the LT 11.
Yeah. Usually. Yeah. It doesn't even say in bold on your right to an appeal. It says it on like the third page.
Right. So what they do is they gaslight you by sending you a whole bunch of stuff that looks scary. Nope, that's just the legal requirement. No, that's not the scary one. That's not the scary one. Okay, here's one letter that looks basically the same or less harmless than the other ones. No, that's the one. That's the one you got to get. No, we need that one because when we get that one, we have 30 days to file an appeal with IRS Appeals, which is, I love how they say an independent office of the IRS. Independent office of the IRS. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean? No, you work for the IRS. I'm very sure you work for the IRS. However, they are a bit cooler. They might have been a little bit more cooler when they actually had the staff years ago. Now they're overworked like everybody else.
They have some discretion. They don't have to follow their manual, which doesn't get updated all the time.
Yeah, they can be pretty cool. If you know how to, if you work with them and make their job easy, make it easy for them to decide in a reasonable way. You're not asking for something stupid, because their stuff is always reviewed, so they can't grant you whatever. They're not going to. That's not why they're there. So you give them something reasonable that's well supported, you got a really good chance. And that's why we want to request our appeals hearing. It's collection due process hearing, which is really, those are two helpful words for every taxpayer. This is your collection due process hearing. What do you think of those words together?
Collection due process hearing?
See, you said it.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Collection due process meeting.
Meeting. Is that what you remember? Like,
Yeah.
Why would I
don't
want
think
a
I'd
meeting?
call it a meeting.
No, hearing.
Hearing.
But it is a meeting.
Yep.
It's a hearing that you could do over the phone or in person.
Okay.
And basically, in their IRS appeals, they usually could be anywhere. They could be like at an office park.
Yep.
Or they could be in a government building. So they're all around the country. So it's a meeting or hearing. It's a meeting. Yeah, collection due process. All this stuff that becomes these words become sort of our backhand. But
Yep.
then when you step back to say, what does this look like to the taxpayer? And are they really supposed to understand any of this?
Yeah. Well, I would say collection due process. How long do you have to? I don't know.
Just what does it mean, and why would I refer to that? Why would a taxpayer refer to this? Hey, this gives you a really cool, this is something you want to do, because that's really what it should say. This is something you want.
Do this.
Do this. Yeah.
Hey, you want to meet for beers and have a collection due process hearing? That's not something I've ever said.
I don't know if they say it on those letters, but on some letters where you have appeal rights, they also say, you can contact the taxpayer advocate too. And sometimes that sounds a little sexier to the taxpayer.
Yeah, and contact the taxpayer
advocate.
But you don't know how to. If you don't know how to say it, with the taxpayer advocate can be helpful, but you have to advocate your case to the taxpayer advocate for them to give a crap about you.
Right.
If you just send that thing in, they're like, yeah, okay, get in line. If you say, this is really important because I'm a nice guy, and give you facts about why you're such a nice guy, okay, now they're personally invested in, like, yeah, this is a good person here. We got to get on their side. So you have to attorney yourself to your advocate when you use a taxpayer advocate. That's what most people don't realize.
And they might ask you why you didn't file that appeal, too.
Right. And they say, well, I didn't file.
Who pays the taxpayer advocates? Are they?
The IRS.
Shut up.
No, they're a separate office.
They're a separate office of the IRS.
Jesus. All right. They go to the training school next door to the IRS.
I don't see here. Let's. I don't know if we have much more for this section here. I think we're going to get you back, Tom, to talk about some of the state stuff. Or actually, I think we could really go off on topic on some of the tax court craziness and how some of the procedures. Oh boy.
Oh, I'd love to hear some of those.
Do you think? Oh, we'll talk about procedures and how they define their procedures we define their procedures. It's really a lot of fun. I think we should conclude right here because I think we've nailed a bunch of great stuff.
Yeah.
And I know we probably overwhelmed people a little bit, but I think we look back at it, like innocent spouse relief is great. It works. And guess what? There's more than just innocent spouse relief. There's equitable relief, which just makes, is it fair for you not to have to pay the tax bill for a spouse?
Yep.
If you want to do it yourself, you can do it yourself, but do not kid yourself. This is a legal claim you're making where the IRS puts in traps for you to screw this up left and right. And so that's what I would say. Now, Tom, tell me how people could contact you, if you don't mind giving a plug for yourself.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
no,
if
that's great.
Okay.
You can contact me. The best way is probably just to go to my website. It's tom.tax.
Oh.
And there's a contact form right there. You can schedule an appointment right on the site. It also has my phone number. I encourage people just to call me. If you don't get me, leave me a message. I'll call you back within 24 hours.
Tom tax. I saw that dot tax.
Yeah.
I was like, no way am I going to pay for that. No way would anyone pay good money for that.
This guy.
This guy.
But you got Tom. Tom. Tax. All right, that's pretty good. All right, well, thanks so much for joining us today, Tom.
Yeah, thank you.
you.
It's been great. Thanks for joining
Thanks
us
for having
today on Parental Advisory. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.